Hi everyone, it's Mari here for Honeybee Stamps, and today I've got another card making project for you using some beautiful products from Honeybee Stamps, including the framed Anemones stamp set. This is a stamp set that was designed by Emily Midget. It is absolutely gorgeous. There's sentiments that go along with, and also a sold separately coordinating die set for those sentiments. Really, really lovely. I was also considering using a couple of papers from the Summer Stems 6x6 paper pad, and I'm also going to be doing some watercoloring with the new prize ribbon color of Distress ink and the Twisted Citron Distress ink as well. So here you can just see I have my Misty on my desk, and I have placed the stamp set on the Misty door, and I'm just taking my anti-static powder tool. I'm going to treat my watercolor paper here with that anti-static powder tool so that my Versamark ink here that I'm going to stamp out is going to stick to my paper, and then my embossing powder will hopefully only stick to that ink and not the paper, which I've treated with that anti-static powder tool. Now I'm taking some gold embossing ink and my Nuvo spoon, and I'm just spooning out that embossing powder onto this stamped image that is all stamped out and ready to go with that Versamark ink. And here you can just see that that gold embossing powder sticks nicely to my stamped image. There's just a couple little spots where the embossing powder sticks to my paper where I don't want it. So I'm just taking a little paintbrush here, and I'm just loosening up the embossing powder and then tapping the back of the cardstock with my brush, and just going to get rid of all of that excess embossing powder. Now I've got the powder all cleaned up. I'm going to take my heat tool and I'm going to melt the embossing powder, and it's just going to leave the most beautiful gold impression here of that stamped image. And I love the frame around these florals. I think it's just so beautiful. It's just a really lovely design. And there you can just see how gorgeous that embossing is. And this is all ready to watercolor. I also took my Tim Holtz decal edge trimmer and I trimmed out the edge of my watercolor paper just because I think that just makes it look really cool. And I just trimmed it out and gave it just a tiny little bit of that distressing on the edges. Now I'm using a wet on wet technique here for my watercolor. This is really simple. My paintbrush is wet, and I put some clear water on the paper, and now I'm just dropping in the pigment where the water is, and I'm going to put more of the pigment where I want the ink to be or the color to be darker. And then I clean my brush out, and now my brush is nice and clean, and I'm just pulling that color into the unpigmented area, and I'm going to leave any area that I want kind of like white. I'm really basically not even going to pull any color into that area at all, so that that's kind of like the highlight on the leaves of the flowers, or the petals of the flowers, I should say. And here, so here you can just see I'm using the lines on the image to help me figure out where I want the darkest part of the petals to be. So where there's those gold embossing lines, that's where I'm going to make it the darkest. And I just love this prize ribbon ink. It is so amazing. So this is the prize ribbon oxide that I have stamped out on my glass mat over to the side there. And I'm just going to repeat that same method for every one of the petals. Wet on wet, go in with a little bit of pigment, drop it into the wet petal area, clean my brush, pull the pigment out to the area where I want it, and just do that same method over and over again until I have all of the petals colored with my Distress Oxide ink and watercoloring it in that way. So super, super easy way. I know a lot of people are intimidated by these really beautiful, intricate florals to color them, but I wanted to just tell you this is such a simple technique. I'm sure you've seen other people do this before. If you've never tried it, give it a try. Try it on maybe some Bristol smooth paper if you're worried about using your watercolor paper. Try it on a different paper first if you'd like, but this is how it all looks when it's finished. And I used Twisted Citron and a little bit of the Rustic Wilderness in the darker areas of the leaves. And then the area around the flowers is tumbled glass. So just some really basic loose watercoloring there to color all of my different florals and foliage and background. And then that frame I left completely white. I didn't put any color in the frame at all. And now I'm taking my Dina Wakley gloss spray in white, and I've wet my fan brush, and I've also watered down the gloss spray just a little bit, splattering that on in my splat box. And I'm just going to show you, hopefully you can see there that the white drops on the florals and the foliage just make it look interesting. They just add a little bit more depth to the painting, and it just kind of cohesively joins everything together. Now this is the Miss You Big Time sentiment stamp set, and I love this set. It's beautiful. I love the size of it, and I love that there's a coordinating die set that's sold separately that you can purchase for these sentiments. Really, really fun. I'm going to use the sentiment thank you for my card. I'm going to stamp it out on another piece of white cardstock. This is just smooth Nina 80-pound classic Crest Solar White cardstock. And I'm going to stamp out with some really nice crisp black ink. This is some VersaFine Claire Nocturne ink. And I'm going to stamp that out using my mini Misty here, and just going to get just that really nice crisp image for my sentiment. And I'm just pressing down on that. I'm just really letting that ink sink into my paper, and I'll just really just let it sit there for a second or two. And in that way, I don't have to stamp it again. Just one stamp and I was done. This is a coordinating die, perfectly die cuts the words thank you. And I actually cut those out 3 times. So the word thank is cut out 3 times and you 3 times. And I'm going to glue all those layers together here in a minute. Before I do that though, I do want to add some foam adhesive to the back of my card front panel. And I'm going to cover that whole back panel, or the back of that whole panel, I should say, with that 3/4 inch foam adhesive that you can find in the shop, in the Honeybee shop. And I will adhere that. I've already adhered that to just a piece of black cardstock that's just a little bit larger than the watercolor paper. I've got a white card base, and I'm adhering the beautiful pattern paper that really coordinates nicely with the prize ribbon to the card base. And then I will adhere my card panel front here with my Honeybee precision glue to that patterned paper, so that you can see there I'm actually going to have 3 layers of paper on my white card base. The pattern paper, the black, tiny little black frame, and then of course my watercolor panel that's the card front. And I love how that looks. I think it just looks really stunning and really pretty. I love it. Now I am going to use my Honeybee tweezers here to help me hold on to these sentiments here while I get them all glued up. So I'm going to add a little bit of the Honeybee Precision glue tube glue to the back of this layer, and I'm going to glue that onto the next layer of that sentiment. So once again, like I said, I did cut these 3 times. The one time is the stamped image, and then 2 more, and then it just gets really nice and dimensional. It's just a nice thick sentiment. And I'm also going to back these with some foam adhesive so that they're even more dimensional on my card front. So I'm going to do that same method with the word you. Cut that 3 times. I'm going to get those all layered together. And I really love the tweezers for this type of work. I just think it really, really helps. So if you're looking for a really nice pair of reverse tweezers, these are fantastic, and you can find those in the Honeybee shop. I'm going to use some dimensional foam strips on the backs of my letters, or of my sentiment here, so you could just see. I'm just going to cut the strips into lengths that are going to fit the backs of those letters there. And I will take the backer off and go ahead and adhere that down, again using my tweezers to help me place this on my card. And I just kind of wanted this in the lower portion of the card. I'm totally okay with it covering up a little bit of the florals, because really the florals are so beautiful. You can still see them well through that sentiment. I'm going to finish off with some of the Summer Stems gems. There's just a really pretty navy that coordinates so nice with that pattern paper. And then of course the prize ribbon ink. I love the prize ribbon combo with that Twisted Citron and Rustic Wilderness. I think it's gorgeous. And then the pops of the gold, shiny gold, beautiful shimmer from the embossing powder. And then these little gems just finish the card off perfectly. beautifully. And I really love how this turned out. So I have linked up to the products in the description box below that I used today for my card. So make sure that you check that out. I hope you were inspired, and I hope that you're going to try coloring some of Emily Midget's beautiful florals that are part of the Honeybee collections. And this framed anemone is just so gorgeous. Thanks for joining me, friends. Have an amazing day, and I'll see you next Friday. Bye-bye.